I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. This is a session to look at some of the opportunities for how we can assist with the support at a government level, but also with businesses in getting to that safe return to normal as normal will be when we move past the COVID pandemic. We've got a lot of great resources in the market already. The development and approval of the vaccines are moving forward at a record pace, and understand that Health Canada is expected to approve the Pfizer vaccine this week, and also has a dry run of the national vaccine distribution system planned, involving the military, healthcare facilities, and workers and logistics companies. So there's a lot of important and critical progress that's being made. It's a huge task and really so important to each of us, and so really appreciate all of the work that is being done. In the U.S. market, we're seeing, many of the same activities with these approvals and evaluations and implementation plans. So as you look at a national program and provincial or state level programs, the linkage between those is so critical. And one of the key things that we'd like to focus on in this webinar is the vaccine credentialing, tying that also to test credentials, but really looking at the vaccines as they're about to come into the market. A key component of the national distribution and logistics plan needs to include how someone can verify that they have received the vaccine, that they have had proper dosing, and can be engaged when needed if something is goes awry, if there's perhaps a recall that's needed. We hope that's not going to be the case. If there are changes that are required to expiration dates or boosters. And I think, we heard Premier Legault mention last week that we're all learning how to deal with vaccination. And there are decisions that still need to be made around vaccination booklets, credential material, and having a national system in place. So in the next 40 minutes, we'd like to provide you with some information on how vaccine tracking can be done seamlessly with the vaccine distribution program, and take your input and questions. I've got with me today, my name is Karen Gardner, and I am the Chief Marketing Officer for CICVA in North America. And I've got with me a few colleagues from CICVA who can answer some questions, but also Bruce Ross, who is the Chief Technology Officer with Allied Identity, one of our key partners in this COVID response. So we'll do some more introductions on our organizations in just a moment. But before doing that, let's see if I can make the slides move forward. There we go. Just from the high level view, right? So we've got this need for a coordinated response. If we're really going to succeed and get the public health benefits that we're all aiming towards, we have to have that rapid and efficient and strong uptake of the complete vaccine series, and that focus on high-risk groups first. Managing those priorities effectively is really going to be key. And so we've made it through some really important steps already with the development of the vaccines, the planning and the logistics around that distribution to the local dispensaries, ensuring that the local healthcare agencies and businesses are up and ready to work with the vaccines, administer those, and manage the tracking of that in the existing electronic health record systems, the existing patient registries or immunization registries in the provinces and in the states, and ensuring that the monitoring is in place, the contact tracing, all of the different elements that will help us to practically, take the vaccines, align them to the other protocols that are already in place. Continued testing will certainly be a priority, both for infection, but also testing for antibodies as the vaccines enter and penetrate the market over time. This is going to be an extended period. So we again wanted to take the time to focus on that gap right now in having verifiable credentials, and something that can be trusted, that can be easily issued and easily verified. So if I could just step back and taking those three areas of the development process, we have a great base of infrastructure in place at both the national and local level. We've seen through continuous engagement with key stakeholders in Canada, in the US, and in other markets around the world that many foundational elements exist, but there are still key challenges that remain. And so among those, one of them is really that last mile of the logistics. So certainly the challenges are there in getting the vaccines to the market, especially dealing with things like cold storage on some of the vaccines. But it's about not just getting it to the point of administration through the various logistics channels, but it's also being able to manage effectively that administration and knowing who got which vaccine, when and where. Some markets and within given markets, there might be specific testing and vaccination centers that lack accessible automated solutions for vaccination administration. And, we're seeing and hearing about different points of gap filling where there might be manual inventory management or manual recording of the vaccinations on paper to be then data entered to add into existing IIS or registries in place. And every time we have a manual process come into play, you have a risk that comes up. And so wanted to look at how we can support that last mile of the logistics and getting that linkage between the vaccines that are distributed to the vaccines that are then being administered, and managing the vaccines across the life cycle for dosing as well as for expiration and administration when that's needed. The second piece of this is the proof of the health status, right? So being able to manage that follow through I just mentioned, but also verifying someone's immunization or test status when it's required locally for protocol management, nationally and internationally, right? So some of the cases that we're going to see, certainly internationally, as you look at international travel, vaccines will be required. Already we have the proof of a negative test result is required. And the local protocols, whether it's for access to, getting back into school and into dorm rooms, or it is senior healthcare and senior living environments, and employers who have large numbers of employees in tight quarters and operating, getting back to a full-scale operation. You'll see the need for vaccinations and test results to be supporting those activities and those protocols to continue to ensure that we have safe engagement. The third challenge really builds on the first two and is looking at the accurate and timely data that can be provided from these processes to support the ongoing public health management. So efficacy based on distribution, administration, and outcomes, ensuring that individuals have the confidence in the vaccine and are getting immunized, and then having that data to further shape the ongoing decision-making protocols, contact tracing activities, and bringing these things together for the ultimate goal of improving our response and eradicating COVID and future pathogens that will certainly be coming into the market. And so leveraging and learning from this experience with infrastructure and tools that can support us for the long term as well. As we look at the vaccine records, I think this is a great example in an article that was published by Bob Bell from the Ontario, former minister or deputy minister of the Ontario Health Department, looking at the role of the immunization records and how we're recording those records to support our overall response, that being one of the key challenges that still exists when you're looking at having a paper-based document, as is used in many markets, right? We still have the record is internationally that is authorized for international travel is the yellow card, and that is what the Canadian credentials are also based on. And this is a paper-based document that is easily frauded, right? The fraud may not have been a concern when we weren't didn't have the same reliance on vaccines in a market like Canada and the US, where we have new pathogens and we're established with the childhood vaccines that are in place. But COVID sort of changes the game in terms of what's being required. And now this is a worldwide issue. So where the yellow card was critically important for travel in places like Africa and Latin America, it is becoming critically important that we also have trusted credentials for the COVID vaccine and any other future pathogens that might arise. So SICPA has been working on this. SICPA is a company. We're actually a Swiss headquartered or company with operations in Canada, in the US, and in markets all around the world, where we have been providing security solutions to protect documents and credentials. Today we protect more than 90% of the world's currency, including the Canadian dollar and the US dollar. We protect identity credentials in preventing fraud and tampering and counterfeits with passports, driver's licenses, immigration documents, and that has transitioned into supporting digital credentials as well. So we have a new offering that we released into the market called Certus, which is being used to provide security to digital credentials, but credentials that can also be then printed or provided in plastic cards like travel cards, but having that flexibility to know that you can have a trusted document and a trusted credential to work with and leverage. That the Certus product is being used in trials and pilots with the WHO and the country of Estonia as it relates to modernized vaccination infrastructure. And so we're looking forward to the progress of those pilots. And part of what we've done to extend this approach is to partner with another company called Allied Identity and a series of other partners to take the credential into a larger vaccination management and credentialing system, right? So looking at the process for how those credentials get issued and supporting some of the gaps that exist today in the systems that are present in a variety of markets. So we've looked at the systems available. We have aligned against a group of really core principles and how we are operating and how the partners that we are bringing on board are operating to ensure that what we do bring to market preserves individual privacy, that it ensures that there is trust, right? No one should be self-authenticating. And so how do you have that ability to verify that something was issued by an appropriate health authority or health practitioner? And building out solutions that are not rip and replace, but building on and leveraging the current investments that are out there, because so much has already been done to put in place key infrastructure. When we try to do the big bang of implementing an end-to-end system that's going to take millions, if not billions of dollars and months, if not years to implement, it's a very risky proposition. And I think we've all seen and experienced projects like that over time. And so we are really looking at how we can help support the government response with modular components and solutions that address those needs. I'd like to invite now Bruce Ross from Allied Identity to talk briefly about what Allied has been focused on with regards to modernization of vaccination credentials globally. And then we'll get right into the Vaxtrac system and giving you a demo of how this solution and the different components work, so that if there are places that would be valuable in helping to fill gaps that you may see in your region, in your country, or in your organization, we want to really take the opportunity to explore those with you. So Bruce, I'll let you jump in here.
Okay, thank you very much, Karen. Appreciate everybody taking the time to be with us today. So let me quickly give you a little bit of background. I'm going to start with, on Karen's slide, you can see there's a company called Salamander Technology. Salamander was essentially a part of a company called Orange Hook, which our group, Allied, split from, but we have essentially, they're a sister company. Our background, Allied Identity's background, is in, as you can presuppose by the name, is an identity. The founder of the company was Jeff Atera, who was the CEO of Entrust Data Card. Entrust is based, I think, in Toronto. Data Card's in Minnesota. I had worked with Jeff. I was the founder of a company called CardLogix. CardLogix was a big smart card manufacturer in the United States and doing operating systems and things like this. And we essentially formed Allied Identity to build out the infrastructure assets that tie cards and databases together and solving specific problems, whether it's homeless people or and trying to get them assets they need, or whether it's working on this vaccination issue. Our backgrounds came from dealing with vaccination problems in Africa. So I'm going to show you, here's a card that we built for the Ethiopian government. Originally, there was a lot of vaccinations that were kids were being over vaccinated by NGOs in Africa back in the HIV and Ebola days. So they were trying to keep track of them. So individual organizations went around and built tracking systems so they could try to share it. But still, the data wasn't shared properly. You couldn't prove who gave what, and we weren't doing the actual back end of this as much as providing the cards. Since then, we've developed a system to replace the yellow card, as Karen had just mentioned, and we've digitized this into a digital equivalent of a yellow card, and it now is shareable across multiple boundaries. So it's not tied to any international boundary. It's not tied to one database. It works for each individual province, can have their own immunization system and still share through privacy the ability to say, I got a vaccination or I have gotten a COVID test. And so that's the core what Allied Identity does. We bind that to individual identities as well as governments require. Salamander, the company up in the corner, is the premier supplier of incident management, emergency management, real-time services for the U.S. government. They're in every state in the United States. They have a platform that allows you to track assets. That could be a fire truck or COVID or PPE equipment or test tools, as well as it also allows you to track public health officials in terms of what they're doing. So you might have an emergency, whether it's a fire, a hurricane, whatever, and it can tell you who comes into those incidences and who manages them. Salamander's platform is not required. It's a module like all the other software is here, and allows you to mix and match based on your gaps that you have in your existing infrastructure. The other partner here is AB Corp. They were founded in the United States in 1795 to do currency for the US government. They're the first credit card manufacturer in the world. So our card manufacturing for travel cards is now done by AB Corp. They're producing this in Canada. They have a factory, I think, in Ontario, which they bought a company called Keystone a few years ago. And so the smart cards could be made right in your own country for your own travel cards. So with that, that quick overview, I'll let Karen continue through. We've got these challenges that she mentioned. I'm not going to go through them again, but I want to give you a little more context and how that works. And we're going to demonstrate this kind of backwards. Can you go to the next slide, Karen? So we have a database called IBIS. And what I'm going to do, IBIS essentially is where the data gets put when you actually do a record of an actual transaction. So that's essentially what happens. And that's where we're going to store that data. Next one, Karen. Okay, just go through and open them all up, please. So we have these modules, and your government can buy any module they would like. You already have, you may have your asset tracking, or maybe your provinces don't. Salamander has an inventory and tracking management system for that. It works very well, and you can add that to your system. iReg is for registering your healthcare providers. I'm pretty sure Canada already has a sophisticated healthcare registry in their system. So we can just upload that data into our systems. But if you've got volunteers that are helping in the COVID testing or vaccinations and you want to get them into your system, we have an app called iReg. I'm not going to demonstrate that today. but we are going to demonstrate the verification of a credential and then the actual how that data got in here. So if you look at iCheck, that's what I'm going to be showing first, and then it's going to talk to IBIS. So I'm going to switch over to Rob, who is going to show his screen real quickly, which is the IBIS database, and then I'm going to show you where how the data gets into there. So he's going to share his screen real quick, and you want to show IBIS, right? No, IBIS. Hang on 1 second, please. Share IBIS right here. So I think you can now see the IBIS database, and you can see my vaccination, and this is a mirror of what is in the current yellow card that WHO and the CDC in America have come up with, the International Vaccination Certificate of Prophylaxis and Vaccination. This has the same data sets that in paper is now represented in a format that is digital. Now that digital record is not given to the user this way. They carry it on an app or on a card, but this is where the data sits. So I'm going to I can show you my screen, which is going to share my whole screen, screen 1, and we're going to now do a iCheck validation of a certificate. So if you see on my screen, here's the certificate that was already given to me, and oh, hang on a second here. If you can see my screen, both screens, there's a certificate on the left side, which has been issued to me for a test. And there's 4 apps. The apps I just talked about are at the top. So I'm going to use the iCheck app, and I'm going to literally scan the barcode on this, which has got the blockchain certificate and everything done with the people from SIGPA. So we're going to go backwards here for a second. And the results are in. I have a completely secure test, and that's what that looks like off of a paper certificate. That same test, I'm going to show you what it looks like on a mobile wallet or mobile application, which is called MyVax. And MyVax essentially can carry the data on here. Oh, that's my most recent one. Let me go backwards for a second here to home and go to the test I had. So these are all the tests that we've had. And the one I just showed you was this one here, that test here. And the details of this is the same which you just saw verified through the barcode. So that matches what you see on the left-hand side. This is a application, MyVax, that allows a person to carry and control who gets to see what tests they've had and what vaccinations. You can see there's a number of the vaccinations here. You can go to one of them, and then you can email it to yourself if you want a paper certificate like the left, or you can show that details to somebody who wants to verify access for that. That, unfortunately, based on the ICAO rules, ICAO is the International Certificate or International Civil Aviation Organization, doesn't allow phones to really be used for border control. They have a different format, which is a passport card or a travel card format, ID card format, which we have built as an option called the test and travel vaccination card. That card essentially meets the ICAO standards, and it can be updated through the actual MyVax app. So there's a number of features that MyVax does. As you can see on the screen, I'm not going to go through them all. You can also control your PIN at the top here by entering your own PIN. So, and then that's going to verify 1, 2, 3, 4. Next. So this allows you to control your app, and you can turn on the app lock at the top, as you see. So when I open the app, I have to put my PIN in. If you're out in the wilds of Canada and you don't have internet connectivity, your records can be cached and still read without being connected to a database. So a separate phone and an app can be looking at each other, and you can actually check somebody's records without being connected to the internet. So that's some of the features that the app has. It also allows for a parent to carry, this can have children underneath that for their health history as well, and their vaccination records. That's just myself at the moment. So essentially, this is a carrier. If you choose to hook this to your COVID alert, we can hook it to that, or we can essentially send that data from a GIS tracking. If the customer chooses to be tracked through GIS, We can then hook that to your COVID alert system, which I think you've got in place in Canada. We make it opt-in because we don't want to be tracked or people don't want to be tracked. It's an opt-in feature for us. So that's pretty much what MyVax does, and that gives you a sense of that. Now, how did the data get into this to start with? We have an app called iPharm, which is a dispensing app. I'm assuming everybody can see that. You can use assuming this device, I'm now wearing the hat of a healthcare provider, not a user. So the user does not get this app. This app is for the healthcare provider. And they sign in, the device is already pre-registered to that providing team. And then the device has to be signed in by a doctor. I'm going to sign in quickly by using a card, which is signed in, but you can also type the same data in if you want. But an employee badge can be held to the back of the phone and done that. Now I'm going to enroll somebody. Now you can see I've signed in as Henry Morgan, and I'm going to give myself a test, but I got to figure out who's coming in. So I'm already in the system, so I'm going to do it for speed. But you can register somebody by scanning a Canadian driver's license, or they can do a pre-registration. It makes it very fast. I've controlled this sandbox that we're demoing, so it's going to be, I'm the only one in here, so you don't have to fill in the rest of the information to do that. So now I've been found in the system, and the healthcare provider, Henry Lee, is going to give me a test or a vaccination. So I'm going to essentially give myself a vaccination at the moment, and you pick the vaccination you want. So let's give myself Typhorex, and I think that's GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, and you give it a batch ID, which is what comes right off the vaccination itself, the material, and then the expiration date, you can set that over. And then you have essentially the ability to, this is going to be a 1-dose deal, and it's milliliters, and it's 25 milliliters. And the vaccination date is today, and we are going to give the HL7 code, which I'm assuming you're using. I'm just putting raw data in there at the moment. I didn't look that up, but it'll be on the bottle. And then you essentially say, okay, is that a good vaccination? So on my screen, I'm giving myself Typhorex. Today, I'm signing and sending this data, and we're now sending this to the blockchain of SICPA, Certus blockchain, digital seal that this doctor date through this process. It's sending data back and forth between the system that you would have and this, and it's generating a barcode which can be sent to the user when they've registered. It's automatically being sent, and it's doing the cert activation now. And now that cert will be activated, and it's writing the data to the server, and it's sending the email to the user. So the user now has a certificate just like the one I just showed. So there you have it. That's the entire system. It works the same way for tests. You can open up a test, choose a test type, etc. So it's not much difference, but that's essentially the process. If there's any questions on this, be happy to answer them now. Karen, can you see if there's any hands up? Hi there.
Hi there. This is Jill. I am putting my hand up.
Okay, Jill, you got a question?
Sure, I do. Quickly, I thought I heard you say early in the presentation that Canadian driver's license can be scanned, I guess to
register.
Get a download of that demo info. Did I misunderstand you?
Well, you know, when you're registering somebody coming in for a test or a vaccination, you can use multiple credential types. You can use a driver's license. If you have a health ID card in your country, we could set that up. But you need to bind the vaccination event to a person. And we use driver's license. Typically, the app itself in the iPharm app has a button. They can pre-register, and then you can verify that driver's license, or we can scan the driver's license right there, which pre-fills the data, so somebody doesn't have to wait, you know, through the whole process of somebody typing it in. It makes the registration fast as a workflow. So,
absolutely perfect. I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't just Canadian, just only because you made that distinction.
No, we configure by each country's approved. So when we set this up, each country has their approved list of vaccinations or approved list of tests. That's pre-configured for that country or that province to say, okay, here's what you can use. So they don't have to dig through everything. I've got a lot of stuff on here, but you can literally use only the ones that are pre-approved, and a lot of this is then pre-filled. So everything moves very fast. The whole interaction is going to be less than a minute if everything's pre-filled.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And I would add to that, Bruce, one of the things that by binding the identity of the individual to the record of the vaccination, that same information gets included. So a unique ID or a link back to like a driver's license number, for example, would be embedded in the code is the record of the vaccination. And so what CERTIS is doing here in that QR code is it is protecting the data that is being recorded. And so you will have the data about the individual, just the very most basic, right? And the individual controls this, right? They decide who they share it with when they need to share it. But in that code, when it's verified, you can, as the verifier, check who this individual is, match it to a driver's license or a passport, whatever was the identifier that links it to them. And then the data about the vaccination or the test and the test result, including things like the expiration date, will be protected in that code, whether the code is being viewed in the MyVax app or another app on a phone, or it is being, checked and scanned from a piece of paper that someone printed out, or embedded in the NFC chip on a card. Then you have the ability to verify the authenticity of the credential, the linkage of that credential to the individual standing in front of you, and the accuracy and legitimacy of the data, right? So that no one could come in there and change or tamper with the date and change the expiration date, for example, or change the name as an example without the verifier seeing that. You would get an error in the verification check when you scan it.
And so this app, the iCheck app that was used for this scanning, is available for all your businesses, hockey venues, churches, to get people back together once they've validated. So it's up, that liability is going to move to those individual businesses. Are they going to let people into their, hang on a second, people are texting me, I apologize. Essentially, the app can verify for each individual business user, and he doesn't have to be having special connections to anything. The app does it really seamlessly, and it's easy, as you can see, it's easy to use. You just, pick two buttons, scan it, and you're done. And it also can verify actual test and travel vaccination cards at airports for border control.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I think with the travel card, making that ICAO compliant and as something that will read with, be easily read in the same way a passport is read on a border. No new devices or apps are required for that. And additionally, there's a web page where anyone could go and verify a code without having to have any special app or device to do that. So very easy to verify and leverage this then as something that can support new protocols to maybe minimize the time that someone might be quarantined when they move from one province or state to another province or state, or one country to another country, to support higher density participation in different types of events and activities, whether that's at an employer or more of an entertainment venue. So you've got a lot of different options as to how it can be leveraged.
You have this deck you can share with your teams if they couldn't make the call, and we'd be more than happy to do additional demonstrations. And once we get going with each province or your group in the federal government, we're happy to give you this to play with, and you can play in the sandbox with the apps themselves. And it can be translated to French as well. So if there's you want it in French or in English, either way is fine.
Yep. So just as a wrap up, thank you so much for that, Bruce. When we look at that proof of health status, right, you had the ability to, for an individual to control their credentials. They're issued to them by the official, health provider who did the test or the vaccine. They can be easily validated, and you've got a back end with CERTIS, which does not store any data. This is a blockchain based solution. No private data is actually stored on the blockchain. The digital seal is created and and it is securing a cryptographic hash of the data. Then you have the IBIS system, which is fully compliant with HIPAA and the Privacy Act as it relates to the healthcare data and the individual's records. This can interface with existing IIS, immunization information systems, or electronic health record systems, and really support that ability to have safer engagement. When you look at how that is captured, it may vary, as I mentioned. So if you look at perhaps in a tribal nation, you might have less infrastructure already in or the patient information and the registration of a vaccination that's been issued. Or it could be something that is already being done by an existing electronic health record system that then interfaces to support the issuance of credentials. So, the iPharm app and the iReg app can be used to support this as part of the solution where it's needed, or it may be an option that instead it is really focused more on the credential itself that's being issued. And then when you take all of the data through all of these different systems and the ability to have that data trusted in real time because it's coming in through more automated versus manual functions, then you have that ability to better support your ongoing monitoring and contact tracing and interfacing with existing systems that are in place on that front as well. So last slide, just really a summary of those benefits, being able to have that transparency and accountability across the vaccines that are being distributed and ultimately administered, and doing that in more real time, having that proof of health status as it relates to the patients, but again also test results can be verified anytime, anywhere to support the community engagement and travel. And then lastly, that efficiency and speed of response in a way that is also supporting infrastructure enhancements for the long term. So that is all we have. We would welcome if you have any additional questions that you'd like to address in this conversation or following this. Please feel free to reach out to me or to Bruce as it relates to questions or follow-ups that you might have.